Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, Two Blokes Chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
Hey, it's 7.5 minutes past 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and we always reserve this spot for a special guest every Saturday. And in the footsteps, I don't know whether you realise or not, but we've had Russell Morris, Bob Bongo Starkey. We've had Joe Camilleri. Hope this bloke can sing.
Dennis Walter.
We've had Dennis Walter. We've had Ross Wilson.
Brian Cadd.
Glenn Shorrock. How's your singing voice? Rob Cameron, please do the honours.
Yeah, look, I'm delighted to have in the studio a gentleman that I've interviewed 4 times now, I think, on the Monday, Tuesday front page version. He used to be just a local footballer at St Mary's, but he's come good. He's now the Mayor of Geelong. Peter Murrihy, good morning and welcome.
Good morning to you two blokes.
He's on brand.
He's on brand.
Well played. He's done his research.
Like he got that hoodie on.
Yeah, that's right.
He is on brand. It is good to have you, and we're going to be talking about anything else but council stuff today, because I think it's just a chance for the people of Geelong who don't know you, and there's not many left, because football does that in the town. Once you've been able to get a kick in the GFL or played for Geelong at all, you do have a bit of a brand. But you're not a Geelong boy, you're a Port Fairy boy, so let's go back to all those growing up years in a small country town. Great memories?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I grew up in Port Fairy, born and bred Port Fairy, and even now I still find myself being drawn back there, you know, at the later age, I guess. And so I've still got my mum still alive in Port Fairy. She's been in the same house all her life, so 86 years in the same house, my mum.
Should take her out sometimes.
And brother and sister in Port Fairy, and 2 sisters in Warrnambool. So I was the one that strayed a little bit further, you know, so got to Geelong. Yeah.
So the footy club down there, typical of small country town, the whole town gravitates to the club during the winter. It's just the hub of the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So footy during the winter, cricket during the summer, have a hit of tennis occasionally, might visit the golf course, have a whack. But yeah, footy during the winter. And, you know, so over the years, Port Fairy have had some pretty strong sides, but they last won a flag in 1958, which my dad played in, and they haven't won one since. So
that's a long time.
It's a long time. They've probably played off in probably 8 or 9 grand finals since, but haven't managed to win one since 1958.
The Fairy Wobbles.
Attracted some characters, I think, from memory. The great Ronnie Weirmouth wandered down there to coach, did he not?
Yeah, he caused a stir in the town for a few years. I wasn't there then. I was in Geelong, but my brother was playing with Port Fairy then, and you know, I followed him pretty closely, so I was down there a lot. But Ronnie was just a genuine character. But you know, he was in the hotel there. I don't think the hotel ever closed. I think it was open 24 hours a day, you know, 52 weeks of the year. But they loved him, and they got to a grand final with Ronnie, but they couldn't win it. And I think now he's up driving a delivery truck up North Queensland somewhere.
Yeah.
Be warmer.
Yeah.
So for those who are playing along elsewhere, because obviously we have an international audience, Peter, as you understand, or we should be calling you your worship or something, shouldn't we?
Peter's fine.
The jumper that the Port Fairyans wore and the mascot?
Purple and gold.
Mm-hmm.
So purple with a gold V and the seagulls.
Oh, gee, that must have taken a while to come up with. It was going to be that or the dolphins or something, wasn't it?
So school down there, high school in Warrnambool, on a bus?
Yeah, primary school, St Pat's Primary School, Port Fairy, and then secondary school for everyone in Port Fairy was jump on the bus and head across to Warrnambool to secondary school. So did that for 6 years. It was good. It was a great lifestyle. And, you know, all the kids growing up in Port Fairy, I think, were envy of most others around the area, I think. You know.
And even though it's very much an agricultural area, dairy, a lot of vegetables grown down that neck of the woods, but your career choice was finance as a youth into the banking world. Was that a difficult thing to do, or did you always want to do it?
Oh, look, I just fell into it. It wasn't so by choice, that's for sure. I think I was halfway through year 12, and Mum still thinks I never opened a book in that time. And one of my mates' dad was the manager of the Commonwealth Bank, and he said, "Peter, do you want a job?" And I said, "Oh, well, okay." So I started the next Monday. So there wasn't too much thought in it.
Just a humble bank teller.
Just a humble bank teller, but I got to the number one teller.
Oh, right. That's good.
Very quickly.
when the other one was away.
Okay, so did the Commonwealth Bank realise your reliability and they had to get rid of you, or was there an opportunity in Geelong that you just couldn't refuse?
No, it was back then. I think most bank employees, you get transferred, and the boss came out at Warrnambool there one day and said, "Oh, you're off to Geelong." So I thought about it for a while, and I thought, yeah, that'll be okay. So I thought I'd travel back and play footy in Port Fairy, and so I arrived in Geelong, and I've said it before, and it's so true. Did not know one person in Geelong. I couldn't reach out to anyone, and had the bag in the back of the car and stayed at a hostel and a pub for 4, 6, probably 8 weeks, I guess, till I found a rental. But I was just amazed, and I was still blown away by the football clubs, the whispering, because it was around February, March. Wow, I couldn't believe it. Everyone wanted to speak to me about playing footy in Geelong.
Well, let's wind back to Port Fairy. What was your status in the football club at that particular time?
Yeah, so I started playing senior footy when I was 17. And I still wanted to play at Port Fairy. That's where my dad played. That's where, all my mates were playing. So when I came to Geelong, in the back of my mind, I thought, oh, look, I might train with a club here in Geelong and travel back and play at Port Fairy, but it never happened. So.
And of course, the Hampden League being very strong as it was then, and probably played against Geelong a bit, so your reputation, whatever it was, would have been well known, because the footy world, now very much so for different reasons, but back then even, everyone knew everything that was going on all around. So if you lob into town, I could imagine the phone would have been ringing hot.
Oh, it was. It was, as I said, it was incredible. And actually my first day at the bank, I was being shown around, introduced to all the staff, and I got to telephonist, and the girl who was introduced said, "Oh, this is, I forget her name. This is our new guy starting, Peter Murrihy." And she said, "Oh, I've got a message here for you." And she had it written down, Don Matheson, ring Don Matheson. So I had no idea who Don Matheson was. It could have been
you soon found out.
And, I didn't associate it with footy because I'm at the workplace. And I say, during my lunchtime, I rang Don Matheson, and the rest is history. You couldn't say no to him.
No, I was going to say, he's a very famous Geelong character. As much as the players are well known, Don Matheson's name in local footy, everyone knew him. What sort of a character was he?
Oh, he was tremendous, and I remained great mates with Donny right through. So that's 40 years, I guess, not quite 40 years. And Donny was president of St Mary's then, and then of course went on to be president of the league for a long time. He was just revered. He was just the nicest fella, and and great to be in his company, So I think he was lived to his 90s. He was into his 90s, yeah. And actually, he's one of his brothers just passed away there a couple of weeks ago. So it was the end of the Matheson line. Right. All the boys, yeah.
Yeah, that sort of patriarch, if you like, similar to the Frank Costa at Geelong. It wasn't just the club. They seemed to touch everyone. Each player, even the seconds players, they knew him. They would go to him for advice and guidance, from what I can gather. Very much a fatherly figure.
Yeah, he was great, and was actually at the club the night I was awarded my life membership, and I made special mention of him, and I know he loved that, and I loved him being there on that night as well. So very special man.
The quality of footy at St Mary's, you were a very good side in an amazing era. The North Shore. St Mary's, St Mary's, Newtown, Bell Park. Probably you played in a few of that era where it was pretty tough. Fantastic footy.
Oh, it was another level from what I experienced in the Hampden League. Actually, much more. It was much higher level. It was great. Like my first year, 1980, we played off in a grand final against North Shore. They beat us by 10 points at Cardinia Park, and that's back Gordon Hines' time, coaching North Shore. And we had Terry Emond, who I still catch up with a coffee with Paul Zanoni.
Yeah. And good morning, Paul. I think Paul said he was going to be listening this morning. Missed that grand final with injury, he remembers, sadly.
Yeah, Xana, Good morning to you, mate. So that was a really strong side, St Mary's side, and so we were runners up, and I think the next year we slid a little bit at the end of third and then fourth. So I had 10 years there at St Mary's, or a bit over 10
Before
years.
we go elsewhere, I did mention it off air, but I can't not. A teammate of yours who is a friend of mine listening on the Gold Coast, Stephen Brown. Good morning to you, Flash, and you got good memories of him as well as St Mary's, and coached Forest and finished his career at Bellpost Hill.
Stevie Brown, the best telecom technician going around, and Brown, if you listen, I still remember you stirring up Alan Woodman there one day at Barwon, and the eyes rolled in his head, and he was going to throttle the closest St Mary's player to him, and it happened to be me, and I looked and told you, Brownie, shut up.
And we mentioned off air too, the creativity doesn't go too far, does it? That at St Mary's he was known as Brownie. I got a feeling, Rob, if you were there, you'd be Camo.
Camo. Camo was the first nickname I got when I come from humble Wordy Bullock to Geelong Tech.
Yeah,
Camo.
Yeah, I reckon that'd be the go.
Seemed to fit.
Yeah.
Now, you upset a few. You left St Mary's to go off to other clubs. Tell us about those decisions and why.
Oh, yeah, look, I don't think I upset too many, but I'd perhaps come to the end of my time at St Mary's, senior footy, and I joined the police force, and it was hard to get to training and get weekends off. Anyway, I finished up, applied for the coaching job at Amateurs, and so I was a senior playing coach there for 4 years, which was fantastic. We had a really good 4 years there, and then pretty much after the last game, I actually did. I took my boots off and threw them in the bin in the change rooms, and that was it.
That was it.
That was it. No, well, someone did get them back out and gave them back to me.
But it's a bit like smokers, isn't it? They say they get that last pack, they wreck it, they chuck it in the bin, and that's it. Well, it's a bit the same if you don't. Those boots.
Yeah.
The police force, interesting banking career. How far did you go in that? Did you ever really fit into it? What was the decision to change career?
Well, so then I was working in the bank in Geelong, and after a couple of years they said, "You're off to Murrihy." And I said, "No, I'm not." so resigned from the police force, from the banking, and joined the police force, and which was great. I had nearly 22 years in the police force.
Just the interesting career choice from banking. Was there had there been a passion earlier in your life to join the police force, or a family member as a?
No, not really. I think look, there's a few guys I knew had joined the force, and they seemed to enjoy it. Like I was 25, 26, and you sort of start looking around and think, well, what am I going to do with my life? What career am I going to have? And so I'd always said I had my eye on the police force, but never, filled out the forms, the application forms. And anyway, so I did, and got in pretty quickly, and had some great years in there.
How long were you chasing crooks before you then picked up the paperwork job and became quite well known around Geelong as the police prosecutor?
Yeah. So I probably had 3 or 4 years on the beat, I guess, the divvy vans around Melbourne. And back then I mainly was based in Footscray, which was one of the busiest stations in Melbourne at the time. Was the time when heroin was huge around the Melbourne, and Footscray was perhaps the capital of the heroin, I thought. But anyway, so wanted weekends off to play footy, so the only way I could really do that was move somewhere else within the force, and of course, police prosecuting was Monday to Friday. You're in the magistrates' courts, so got into that, and my first few cases were at the old Russell Street courthouse, and then a position came up in Geelong, and I was lucky enough to.
But how do you make that transition? How's the opportunity open up with the skills you've got to go into such? Well, you'd have to be really on your game in that space.
Oh yeah. So there was an internal course you did within the police force, being the prosecutor's course, and that was 4 to 5 months. It was fairly full on, and I hadn't done an exam for a number of years. So I remember I had real difficulty the first few weeks with exams, and because they've condensed so much law into this 5-month course, so it was took a bit to get my head around it, but eventually learned how to study again, and got through it okay.
And then as you're getting into it, I remember vividly a very prominent criminal lawyer spoke at a sporting function in Geelong, and he spent most of the night telling the world how clever he was and how dumb the police were, because they presented their case and he was to tear it to pieces because the evidence was all over it. The more involved you got, the more experience you had, did you become quite the Sherlock Holmes on needing to make sure that all the ducks are in a row when you go to court?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there was a couple of courts. There was courts where they'd plead guilty, so that was you'd just read out a summary, and that was pretty basic, pretty easy. But then be a court where they'd be contesting charges, and of course, that what you say, I'd be interested to see if you gave a name for that person.
I will off air.
Yeah, and I reckon I could actually name that person. But they come down from Melbourne, the barristers, the high flyers, and think they'd wipe the floor with the police prosecutors here in Geelong. But we put up a pretty good show. So you had to know your stuff. You really had to. If you're arguing law in court against one of Melbourne's better barristers, you got to know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's would have been interesting times, and that also that bit about that sometimes the police may not have done everything tickety-boo, and there might have been some stuff with evidence, and there's lots of stories over the years of evidence planted or disappeared and that sort of stuff. So I guess the pressure's on you. You're the man representing all the blokes behind you that have done the work. Did you ever get really embarrassed when things fell to pieces?
There was a few moments when you realise that the policeman in the witness box might not be really across the evidence, and you're trying to lead them one way, and they're going completely the other way, and you could see the case just falling apart. But that happened occasionally. Yeah.
The other voice you're hearing, folks, is the Mayor of Greater Geelong, Peter Murrihy. I'll get it out eventually. It's been one of those mornings, haven't had coffee yet.
Mayor Mert.
That's it. Yeah, from here on. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So the role that you were doing up in Footscray and those parts, were you living up there, or were you coming back to Geelong?
That's another good point. No, on the train.
Okay.
So and then we were first married. So on the honeymoon, and I'm back on duty in the police force, and I was night shift was my first shift. Straight after being married, and I was on the train coming home from Melbourne, or my wife was on the train going to Melbourne in the morning. So we'd wait.
Dear.
Yeah, that's my wife's train, or that's my husband's train. So that went on for quite a while, and until I got a position down here in Geelong.
Yeah. Because I would have thought, I'm an old school teacher, and when I say old, I mean former, you understand. And I lived in...
Well, you do look a bit old.
Thank you very much. And I lived in Murrihy, just for the record, just where you didn't go.
So good career
We might
choice.
have crossed paths way back if I had gone there.
Yeah, I taught down in that part of the world. But I found myself going to the local shopping centre to do my grocery shopping, and you'd see a kid, not from your school, but from another school, where you just go, come on, mate, behave.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself doing that? You're on the train, you kind even though you're off duty, you just got your eye out all the time. Is that part of the...
Yeah, absolutely. Not so much on the train, but so when I was prosecuting down here, you'd go out and do some shopping, and you'd look at someone and they'd look at you. It was just that, okay, yeah, I've seen you, and they'd move on. But I got confronted, in the shops a few times. Made a couple of arrests Safeway a couple of times, which didn't go well. But when I got my daughter with me, and anyway, so I'm wrestling on the ground and with a
packet of teddy bear biscuits in your pocket, and not in your pocket. I don't mean that you weren't stealing them. You understand?
That's interesting you say that, because the next scene I was going to go to, your face in the public sphere, doing that role were there a few occasions where things got tense?
There's one chap wanted to have a crack at me out one night. He recognised who I was. So I quickly diffused and got out of there. It wasn't safe to hang around. It was probably a few of those. Yeah.
Good
skills to have for a footy coach, to be able to diffuse things and
elude the opposition.
A quick look around to see where the exit signs were.
How did you... the modern term transition from player to coach, was that quick and easy or a tough gig?
No, I think I did it pretty well. And I love coaching. Coaching was great. I just really enjoyed it. I'd be coaching now if it was just on a Saturday.
Yeah.
But gosh, it's so involved. I mean, it is training, of course, like maybe 2 or 3 times a week, but you never stop. Once the season finishes, well, then it's the recruiting and talking to your players you have. So it became a bit of a grind, I think. But if coaching was just on a Saturday, I'd still have my hand up, I think.
So anyone who's running an Auskick centre who's looking... We're getting close to the end of our time. We could sit and chat all afternoon as well. But
Good. There's 1,000 more questions I was going to ask. We won't go into it because we won't have time. One question without notice. Are you a fan of a draw in the game of footy, or do you like to see extra time in the result?
I'm a fan of the draw. Yeah, what you talking about last night?
Yeah, well, the coach come out and say, no draws, hate them, let's play extra time.
Well,
but
why? It's been a part. Been a part of the history of the game for since the year dot. I don't know why you need to change it.
So it's a free kick for push in the back, but according to Rob, they don't get paid. They don't get paid anymore.
That one's gone.
We just throw that one every now and again. If we just want him to fire up, we just throw that one every now and again about pushing the back.
Just quickly, the police prosecute a big part of your life, but sport. I've had chats with you off air, on air about the importance of sport to the fabric of a society, and let's talk about ours, which is Geelong. Extremely rich history, and you talk about the Don Mathesons of the world that shape characters of young people. It's just, I guess, a major part of your life, but you wouldn't like to see things change too much with sport in a community like this.
Oh, no. Geelong has the best reputation for community sport, I think, in country Victoria. As a kid growing up in Port Fairy, I remember people moving to Geelong because their son or their daughter showed promise in one particular area, so they're better off living in Geelong and having that base, that community sport, and the ability to go to a higher level. And just through my council duties as well, the clubs are so important and provide so much more than just a footy over or a tennis court or a netball court. It's that sense of belonging in a footy club or whatever sporting club it is that I think every kid should experience.
And in a place like Geelong, it's really important. But in other places, and I'm going to pluck a name out of the air for no reason, but Lake Bolac, it is that town, isn't it? In so many ways, in Geelong, there's so many other things to do. You can join this club or that club, but just those sort of little towns that are screaming out for community focus.
We had a conversation on air, the Pulse at a GDFL game recently with Heath Mahenman, who coaches Anarchy, and that's only just out the road, but it's its own community. Now, they're struggling on the ground to win a game, but he talks about the number of people that come to the club on a Thursday night and a Saturday. It's the whole town. It's the hub of the community. So when you're saying, is the Anarchy Football Club successful? Well, if you're talking games won, no. But are they successful, a club? Extremely successful, because they bring that community together.
Yeah. And that's the thing that probably didn't exist when you and I played footy, the Thursday night meals.
Yeah.
They probably existed with a bucket of chips or whatever, but now, like some of the footy clubs have 2 or 3 sittings.
Yeah.
There's a 5:30 sitting, there's 6:30, there's 8 o'clock. Where the number of meals that for the people to actually get in there is great.
Now, I know that you're probably all over it anyway, but there's a 16-year-old girl who travels from Port Fairy to play cricket at Geelong. She's just made a very prominent state squad as well, so you might soon be the second most famous sportsman to come out of Port Fairy into Geelong.
That's okay. Yeah.
So Maddie Green, we've got big aspirations for her down at the Geelong Cricket Club. She's a star of the future, so hopefully we'll see her name in prominence. The Geelong Cricket Club, like you were talking about before, about coming to Geelong, pulled a huge number of players out of the Western District. Brody Couch, of course, has played state cricket out of Warrnambool. Tommy Jackson's with him as well. It's been a great recruiting ground for footy and cricket to this town. And the number of people that I talk to at Geelong and district level that have come from regional towns to Geelong to Deakin and have attached themselves to a footy club the similar way you did.
Absolutely.
Great stories.
Yeah.
Very much part of our town.
Yep.
Well, we're done and dusted. Pete, thank you very much for your time. Hopefully some people got a bit more of an understanding of what drives you, and I think your sense of community first sits well with the current role. There's a lot of other stuff that goes on that might not be as pretty, but I think people of Geelong will understand why you are doing what you're doing and where you've come from. I think that's most important.
Thanks, Rob. And Neil, been a pleasure.
Great to have you here. We'll probably get you in again another time.